cast this off. A lot of progress on this. The ruffle isn't ruffling. Commissioned to knit. Hello, my name is Hannah and I am a knitter based in the UK, and on this channel I like to talk about what I am knitting. So in this episode I'm going to be talking about some finished objects. I'll then move into my current works in progress, and I have a fair few projects on the needles at the moment. And then I do just have one acquisition to speak about today. As always, I will just start by talking very quickly about what I am wearing today. So this is the blouse number 1. Let's just do that so that you can see a little better. And this is a pattern by My Favourite Things Knitwear. It's a very simple top-down construction with a boat neck, and all of the edges are just finished in plain rolled stockinette. And as you can see, it has sort of a flared sleeve. Now, as you can see, my sleeves look quite short, but this yarn does grow a lot. So during the day, this sleeve will grow right down to here. So the yarn that I used for this is by King Cole, and it is the DK Linen Dale yarn, and it is a blend of linen, cotton and viscose, and I've been told that it is the viscose content that will make this garment grow, so possibly something that I will avoid in the future, because throughout the day the neckline will grow as well and it becomes almost unwearable after a day of wear, so I do have to wash this after every wear. That being said, I do love how it looks when it is fresh out of the wash, and the shade that I knit this in is the shade Fennel, which is a lovely sort of fennel green colour. We're having really lovely weather here today. It's sunny and it's around 18 degrees, which is quite warm for this time of year, so it's my first time this year busting out some of my warmer weather knits. Okay, let's move into talking about my finished objects. The first finished object that I have to share today is my Amy sweater. This was a work in progress in my previous episode, and since then I have cast this off. It's all washed and blocked, and I have wore it a few times already. This is a pattern by Petite Knit, and it's a very simple top-down raglan construction, as you can see there. And all of the finishings are knit in 2x2 rib, and then finished with a portion of plain stockinette which rolls up to form a rolled stockinette edge, and it is of course a roll neck design, so it has this large portion of 2x2 rib forming the neckline, which of course folds over. I don't think there's anything else to add about the construction of this garment that I haven't said before. It is just a simple raglan, and you go back and pick up stitches for the neckline. I knit mine a couple of centimetres shorter in the body than what is written into the pattern. That's just my preference, and I really like the length of this and where it hits me on my body, so I think I'll get lots of wear out of this one. The yarn that I used is Peer Gynt, which is the recommended yarn for this particular pattern, and I used one of Peer Gynt's tweed shades, and it is in the colour 1305, and of course Peer Gynt is a Norwegian yarn. It is around a DK weight, but I would say it is on the heavier side for a DK weight, and you get 91 meters per 50 grams for this particular yarn. It is a rustic yarn, but I don't have any sensitivity to wool, so I really enjoy this, especially for colder days. So I don't know if I'll be getting much wear out of this in this season, because the weather is getting nice and warm and sunny here, but I will probably get some wear out of this next autumn and winter. One more thing to add with this is I did knit this roll neck around 3 centimetres shorter than what is written into the pattern. My thinking behind that is I have quite a short neck, and Previously, when I've purchased shop bought sweaters with these types of necklines, I've found that they come up too high and don't really suit me. So I thought I would knit this a little shorter to alleviate that. However, as you can see, when I fold it down, and particularly when it's being worn, there isn't quite enough fabric here and it looks a little odd. So I will probably at some stage just unpick this and add in a little more ribbing to lengthen the neckline. I have one more project that I have finished since I filmed my previous episode, and this was a gift knit, and this is the Lyon Sweater Junior by Petite Knit, and it was a gift for my godson. And I knit this in the King Cole Merino Blend DK yarn, and it is a very simple top-down contiguous shoulder construction with all over stripes. Let's now move on to my works in progress, and this will be the main bulk of this video for this episode because I do have 6 works in progress on the needles at the moment, so lots going on. Let's start with the work in progress that has been on my needles for the longest, which is my Heart Chain Sweater from Mayo. I showed this as a work in progress in my previous episode, and at that point I hadn't even joined this in the round. I was just working on these front panels. So as you can see, this has been taking up the majority of my knitting time since I last filmed, and I have made a lot of progress on this. I have finished the body, finished the first sleeve, added the neckline, and I am probably just under halfway through the second sleeve, so very close to finishing this one. This is a very standard drop shoulder construction where you knit the back panel first, you do some shaping to create sloping across the shoulders, and you then go in and pick up across both shoulders here to form the front panels and cast on stitches across the front for the neckline before you then join in the round. And of course you then pick up stitches here for the sleeves. The collar, the sleeve cuffs and the hem are all finished in 2x2 rib, which I really enjoy because for me my 2x2 rib always comes out much neater than 1x1. And the collar is folded down, so it is a double thickness collar. And my preference when I am working a folded over collar is to knit the live stitch down with the cast on edge and then cast off at the same time rather than sewing it down with a needle. I just find that that gives me the neatest result, and I still get plenty of stretch when I do that, and I believe that is the method that is recommended in the pattern anyway. So the yarn that I am using is this, and this is a DK weight yarn that I purchased from a motorway service station last year, and it is spun from their own sheep in West Yorkshire, and it's a lovely undyed creamy sheepy colour. And you do get 200 meters per 100 grams for this yarn. I purchased 600 grams of this yarn, and this is the final ball that I do have left, and from the one I'm working on I have this little bit left here, so I'll probably be breaking into the final ball to get this one finished as well. I am knitting this exactly to pattern, so I'm not making any modifications at all. For the body and the sleeves, I have knit exactly the number of rows that is specified on the chart. So I'm just hoping that the lengths of everything are going to work out for me. I have tried this on, but with it being all over cables, it's very difficult to get an idea of what this will actually look like once it has been washed and blocked. I know from blocking my swatch that this yarn does bloom quite a lot as well. So the body is quite short, which doesn't worry me too much because I do like a more cropped style. However, what can sometimes happen with cables is this will expand out and you can end up losing length in the body, which worries me a little bit. There also just seems to be something a little off about the fit of this. I can't quite put my finger on. It's around the neck and the sleeves. It just seems to sit strangely. However, from experience of knitting all over cabled sweaters, when you wash and block them, they completely transform. So I've got a lot of faith that this will all work out when I wash and block it. Also, looking at the project photos on Ravelry, they all seem to have a really lovely fit. So I have a lot of faith for the transformation of this one, and it just makes me really excited to get to the end of this sleeve so I can get this washed, blocked, and see the final transformation and do that first try on after blocking. My next work in progress is a completely new cast on that I haven't spoken about on here before. So here it is. And this is the Olga sweater, which is another design by Petite Knit. This is another dropped shoulder with a very similar construction to the heart chain sweater. So you cast on across the back, you work some short rows to create this shoulder sloping, and you then pick up across each shoulder and knit down, cast on stitches across the front of the neck before you join in the round. And as you can see, I have got to the point where I've joined in the round here, and I've knit this much since joining in the round. So as you can see, this is a all over striped sweater, and the original design is knit in 2 colours, but I am going for a 3 colour striped pattern with mine. The pattern recommends Peer Gynt for the yarn. However, I am not using Peer Gynt for this one. I am using some vintage yarn that I acquired on eBay. I talk lots more about this yarn in my spring knitting plans if you would like to know a little more. But to cut a long story short, it is a pack of yarn that was originally sold by the Wales Craft Council, and it is Welsh Black Mountain sheep wool, and it came in 3 different colours. It is extremely rustic, and you may be able to see here as well that it is very hairy. So it has lots of these sort of rough hairs coming out of the yarn, which do make it quite scratchy. It does soften up quite a lot with blocking, but even for me, I think this is something that I will need to wear a long sleeved top underneath, because I think this could be quite scratchy on the skin. That being said, the postman just came to the door and now the dog is going crazy. Where was I? Yes, this is very rustic, but I quite like that because I know that that means this will be very, very warm for the colder months in winter especially. So let's take a closer look at this yarn, and this is the first colour. So this is of course, a creamy colour. We then have this one, which is a chocolatey brown. And then this final colour appears to be a blend of the two. It's quite mould, and it is sort of a beige brown, or you might even describe it as a taupe. And this is definitely my favourite colour of the 3. And striped up, this is how they are looking. So I'm steadily working through this. The progress is much quicker now that I have joined in the round. The only thing is, when I'm working on projects like this, I really struggle not to get the yarn completely tangled. So every time I go to pick it up, I have to untangle this mess. And I haven't figured out a way to keep them neat. So if anybody has any recommendations for how to avoid this, please do let me know. My next work in progress is actually something that I am self-drafting, and it is inspired by a piece that I have been seeing all over Pinterest, and it is a very simple oversized button-up knit t-shirt. I think this is a store-bought piece. It doesn't appear to be hand knitted. From inspecting the picture, it appears to have a set-in sleeve, but because it's so oversized, the seam falls a little further down on the arm. And it's hard to tell, but I believe it may be in a ribbed knit pattern. So I'm using this as inspiration to knit an oversized button-up t-shirt. And I've decided to go for a dropped shoulder construction. So this is the third dropped shoulder garment that I've got on the needles at the moment. And again, I have used the standard construction of casting on a number of stitches across the back. I then worked short rows to create sloped shoulder shaping. And I have then picked up across both shoulders, and it's rolled up, you can't really see, but I've worked some shaping around the neck because this will be a crew neck. And I have then joined the entire thing into one piece, and I'm now knitting back and forth. So I've knit a little way since joining the front pieces with the back pieces. So I've done the difficult bit for now, which was working out all of the maths to get the fit of this correct. I want it to have around 30 centimetres of positive ease. So it's going to be quite oversized. And for now, I'm just working back and forth, which is lovely and easy. I don't really have to think. I'm just going to work back and forth in plain stockinette until I reach the desired length, which I think will be quite cropped. I did contemplate doing a ribbed pattern to match more of the inspiration photo, but I think actually I will prefer to have this in plain stockinette. So that's what I have gone for. At the moment, I'm thinking that I will do twisted rib details, or maybe half twisted rib, just because it's easier to knit. The other thing that I'm contemplating for the sleeves is actually working a folded over cuff, so working stockinette and folding it over and sewing it down, because I think that would match more with the look of the inspiration. So we shall see when I get to that point. For now, I'm just enjoying working the plain stockinette. So the yarn that I am using for this is Drops Air, and this is in the colour light beige, and this is a alpaca and wool blend, I want to say. It's definitely got a lot of alpaca content, and it is a blown yarn that is blown through a polyamide net. So very soft, light and airy. And just to give this a little bit more integrity and to help everything hold up a little bit more, I'm holding it with Drops Kid Silk Mohair in the colour light beige. And this is just a standard silk mohair blend. So together these give a really lovely, soft, airy, drapey fabric. To add to the airiness and the drapiness, I'm knitting this at quite a large gauge. I'm using 6mm needles. So you can see the fabric here. Because both yarns are very fluffy, when you're knitting it at a larger gauge, those fluffy fibres just fill in those gaps. So the fabric doesn't even look too open, but it's still nice and light and airy and drapey. And I'm getting a gauge of 14.5 stitches per 10 centimetres using the 6mm needles. So this is knitting up really quickly. So I'm just going to enjoy working the plain stockinette for now, and then there will definitely be some brain power needed once I get to working some of the details on this one. I currently have 2 pairs of socks on the needles, so we will start with the first one, which is a pair that I have already shown on here. And I have finished the first sock. Haven't blocked it or woven in the ends, but it is completely cast off. This is a sock from the Afternoon Tea sock set by Carly Perrins. It's a really fantastic pattern. The way that the sock set is written is the designer has broken it down into a cuff library. So you receive the instructions to knit a ruffle cuff, a twisted rib cuff and a picot edge cuff. And then you also receive the instructions for 3 different patterns for the actual socks. So although the sock set is sold as in you can knit 3 different pairs, you could mix and match with the cuffs and the sock patterns and make lots of different combinations. So I have gone for the tea and cake pattern for the body of my sock. And you can get a better view here of what that looks like. It is a cabled design with eyelets, which will probably look much better after blocking. And it is a standard wedged toe and a slipped stitch heel flap and gusset, and I have knit my sock on 2.25mm needles. And then, as you can probably see, I have knit the ruffle cuff. So you start with a section of 1x1 rib, which is actually folded over to create a double thickness portion here. And you then go back in once you've completely cast off your sock to pick up stitches for the ruffle. So this is what the ruffle is looking like. Now, when I put the sock on, the ruffle isn't ruffling. It's just not doing what I thought it would do. And I don't know if that is something that I've done wrong. Perhaps I've cast off too tightly, or I don't know if it's something that I can fix in blocking. I can maybe force this into more of a ruffled shape. So you can see when it's off the foot, it is ruffling, but even then, in some areas, it's not giving what it needs to give. It's still, the ruffle isn't ruffling. So if anybody has any tips on that, please do let me know, because it may be that I've cast off too tightly and I need to go and take this ruffle out and re-knit it, or maybe I just need to modify it to include more increases so it has more fabric to ruffle in on itself. Let me know if you have any advice for that one. I haven't cast on the second sock. I'm having a major case of second sock syndrome with this one, and the longer it goes on, the less likely I am to do it. So I need to get on that soon. The yarn that I'm using for this pair of socks is the West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply. So this is a standard 4-ply sock yarn, and it is a wool and polyamide blend. And this is in the colour Cayenne Pepper, which is a lovely bright orangey red colour. The next pair of socks, again, I have finished the first sock, but I have cast on the second. So we're well underway with this pair. This is a pair of plain vanilla socks. I don't actually use a pattern now when I knit my plain vanilla socks. But if I were to recommend the pattern, it would be the I'm So Basic sock by Summer Lee Designs. I have just memorised the formula that works best for me in terms of a vanilla sock. So I do a 64 stitch cast on a 2.25mm needle with a slipped stitch heel flap and gusset and a wedged toe. For this sock in particular, I have done a 2x2 ribbed cuff just because that gives me the neatest result. And I've used a contrast colour for the cuff and the toe. So the yarn that I'm using for this main colour, as you can see, it is a self-striping yarn, and it has these beautiful yellows, purples, pinks and browns. And this is a yarn by Rico Designs, and it is one of their self-striping sock colourways. I cannot find the ball band anywhere for this yarn, so I will pop the name up on screen if I can find it. But it is just one of their standard sock bases, which is a wool and polyamide blend. And this is what it looks like in the skein. For the contrast colour, I am using Drops for Belle. This is a standard 4-ply sock yarn by Drops, which is again a wool polyamide blend. I will pop the colour name for this one on the screen, but it is a beigey brown colour, which matches very well with the brown that is in this self-patterning yarn. And just to prove that I have cast on the second sock, here it is, and I am just working the 2x2 ribbed cuff. Also, this has just reminded me, I am knitting these socks entirely on tiny circulars. It's the first time I've ever knit a vanilla sock entirely on tiny circulars, and I really enjoyed it because it just went by, it just went by so quickly. So highly recommend trying them if you haven't before, and these are by Knit Pro. So a very basic and boring whip, but this just scratched an itch. Every now and again I have a real craving for a vanilla sock, so I always like to keep a few balls of self-patterning yarn in stash so that I can just pick them up and go when I'm really craving those vanilla socks. My next work in progress is quite a random one. My sister had mentioned to one of her colleagues that I can knit, and her colleague is actually expecting her first grandchild and had asked her if I would be able to knit something for her if she paid me for the yarn and my time. I said yes and immediately regretted saying yes because I don't actually know this person, and as makers we can all relate to this. It is very difficult to put a price on the time that goes into knitting a hand knit garment, because there is quite a lot of hours that goes into it, even for a small baby garment. However, I had committed to it, so I'm knitting this now. And the other issue is that it did set a precedent, and then other requests have come in since, which I have declined. And I did feel sort of guilty declining those requests, but I did feel that I needed to nip this in the bud because it takes a long time to make a hand knitted garment, and I do take a lot of joy in gift knitting things for people that I know and love, but when it comes to being commissioned to knit pieces for people who are effectively strangers, it just isn't something that brings me joy. And knitting is something that I started as a hobby to bring me joy and to calm my mind, and this particular project just is not doing that for me. And I feel so guilty admitting that, because it's a lovely thing to do for somebody, but yes, I'm just not wanting to knit lots of these for people who I don't know. That being said, I did want to talk about this on the channel. Firstly, because of the topic of gift knitting, I know lots of people have their opinions on it, and also I know that lots of knitters can relate to receiving requests for knitted items from people who are effectively strangers, or that we don't feel are knit worthy, and it can put you in a very awkward situation when you say no to those requests. And I for sure feel very guilty for saying no, but I do feel that I need to protect my time and my peace. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that one. That being said, I have sort of enjoyed knitting this, and it's mainly due to the pattern that I'm using. If anybody is looking for a baby knit, I highly suggest this pattern. So this is the sorgenfri jacket. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's the mini jacket, and it is by a designer called Guri Pedersen. This is knit from the top down, and it is a round yoke construction, and it has this garter stitch and 1x1 ribbed alternating pattern, which gives a really nice textured effect. And the thing that I really like about this is it's knit in one piece, so you cast on for the neckline, knit down, and you actually knit the button band as you go. So it's a garter stitch button band, so you're not having to go back in and fiddle around picking up the button band. And then the only thing that probably will be a little bit more fiddly is just knitting the sleeves, so I'll need to pick those back up and knit the sleeves. I don't particularly enjoy knitting very small circumferences, so they may be a bit of a slog. But I'm just about to change needle size to knit the hem of the body and cast that off, and then it will just be the sleeves to go. So I need to have this done by May at the latest, because that's when baby is due. The yarn that I am using is the Drops Baby Merino, and this is in the colour Ice Blue, I want to say. I might be getting that wrong, I'll pop it up on the screen, but it's a lovely sort of baby blue colour, and that is what was requested by the recipient of this gift, whose name I don't even know. It's just ridiculous. And the needles that I'm using are 3.5mm needles. It is looking extremely cute so far, and it really has knit up quite quickly in knitting terms. And I don't want it to appear that I'm moaning about this at all. Of course, I agreed to it completely of my own free will, and the recipient has offered to pay me for this. It's just not something that I particularly want to do more of in the future. As I said, I take a lot of joy in knitting things for people that I love, who are my friends and family, but when it comes to it's just not something that I want to make a habit of doing. So lots of whips. Of course, for me, it feels like a lot of whips. I don't tend to have that many whips on the needles at one time. I've just been enjoying casting things on and just going with the flow. But I have set myself a rule of a 1 in, 1 out. So I'm only allowed to cast on something new once I cast off one of these whips, because there's a lot going on at the moment. I do just have one acquisition to talk about today, and I have bought a quantity of the Yarn Smiths Kid Silk Mohair, and this is in the shade 3285, which is a very lovely blue colour. This is a relatively new yarn by Yarn Smiths, which is Wool Warehouse's own brand. They recently launched this, and I was very excited because the price of this is quite affordable. It is on an introductory offer at the moment. So I paid just under £5 per 25 gram ball of this, which I think is a very good price for silk mohair. It is a 74% kid mohair and 26% silk blend, and you do get 212 meters per 25 grams, so a very standard lace weight mohair strand. And I'm always open to trying new mohairs. This feels relatively soft. It feels very similar to a Drops Kid Silk Mohair. Certainly not as soft as a Knitting for Olive, but I wouldn't be sensitive to that. I would be able to wear this next to skin. So this colour may look a little bit out of character for me because I tend to gravitate towards more neutral shades. But I picked this up to pair with another yarn that I have in stash, and it is a purpley blue coloured yarn that I've spoken about in a previous episode, and this is the best that I could get in terms of colour match, and it's slightly different, but I think together they will look quite nice. So I don't have a particular pattern in mind or a particular plan for this. I just know that I want to hold it with that other yarn at some point in the future. If you have made it through to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. As always, I love to hear your comments. I love to chat to you in the comments below. It may sometimes take me a while, but I will get back to you. I will always reply to all of my comments, as I love to chat to you all. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.